Hey guys, welcome back. It is Sunday, March 26th, 2023. And Sunday morning, we're going to hold church today. That's right. We got Red Wemette. And welcome back, guys. It's my vlog. How you doing today, Red?
I'm doing well. It's hot and nice here.
Fantastic. It's a Sunday morning, and here on my vlog, we've first time going live on a Sunday morning, but should be good. We have a special guest today, Daniel Seifert. So let's bring in Nick. How are you today, sir?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Excellent. It's nice to meet you finally.
Yes, good. Good. I've seen your show quite often.
I've watched different interviews and saw little bits and pieces and heard parts of your story, but I'm excited, and so are all the viewers today to hear this. So Red knows you really well, and well, at least better than I do. So let's get this thing underway. If you guys have questions, leave it in the comments. Hit that like button, and let's get this show underway.
How long have we known each other, Nick?
Right.
How long have we known each other?
Probably about 20 years.
That's what I thought.
20 years?
Yeah, it's been that.
Yeah, quite some time.
I think the first time we spoke was in 2008.
Yes. Or I think it was even before that.
2007.
Right. I think, yeah, 2007. Right. Exactly. That's when it was.
Son of a gun. Anyway, I thought the viewers might want to get a background on how your father, how your family actually got involved with the outfit. So Danny just didn't walk up to somebody and say, "Oh, I'm here. I want a job." And Danny did not go and say, "Oh, I want a loan."
Right. There's no application.
So can you explain to the viewers exactly how it occurred?
Exactly. This went back. Right. This went back into our family, from my grandfather, who was actually working with the outfit on real estate loans and stuff like that. And then got my uncles involved in some light stuff, and then made some introductions to them with the outfit and everything else. And then that's how at least my family got familiar with the outfit. And then my father knew, because of his father, knew a guy by the name of Ray Pappas. And Ray Pappas was the one that introduced my father to Irwin Weiner, who at the time needed some work done around his house. So, Irwin Weiner obviously didn't want just any contractor to show up at his house. So he wanted to make sure that the guy that did come there was a stand-up guy. So Ray Pappas told him, "Hey, I got the perfect guy for you. These guys, they've been around." So that's how my dad got introduced to Irwin Weiner. My dad was probably 23 at that time, 22 or 23.
1 second, Nicholas. Richard Spilotro is asking, "Hey, Nicholas, how's your brother Joey doing? How about we just bring Joey in and we just ask Joey, how you doing today, Joey?"
Hey guys. I was sitting backstage. Sorry about that.
No, all good. This is Nicholas's brothers. For those of you that don't and haven't met, this is Joey.
Whichever.
Awesome. Nice to have you with us today. Thank you for coming in.
Thanks for having me. How you guys doing?
Great.
We're doing great.
All right.
Thanks for showing up.
Sure.
I was
Brad,
wondering
how you
if we were
been?
going to
Yep.
get in on time.
We just got started. We're at the very beginning. So
Good deal.
So yeah, continue on, Nicholas, please.
Okay, so that's how the introduction went as far as my dad meeting Irwin Weiner. And then, like I said, my dad did some work for Irwin Weiner, and Irv Weiner was impressed with my dad's skills. So that's when Irwin Weiner went back to Aldericio and said, hey, listen, can we use this guy for something? He's got a lot of skills. He's a good business guy. He needs a break. So that's when Irwin Weiner introduced him to Aldericio, and then how Aldericio obviously clicked with my father and then introduced my father into some things with the outfit.
But that was all part of the Grand Avenue crew.
That's
Phil
correct.
and
Right.
Weiner were very close. I met them both at American Bonding in 1968.
Correct. Yeah. And,
So-
and that's right around the time that my father got introduced, like right 1967, 1968, right in that time frame.
So after this evolved into a relationship with Irv Weiner, what caused them to go into the fiberglass industry?
Well, my father was already very knowledgeable in fiberglass and worked with a guy by the name of Warren Osborne. Not a connected guy, just a friend of his. And they had a like a little fiberglass shop in the garage of Irwin Weiner's house. And they would work on different things, whether it be Corvettes, that they did some work, fiberglass work on body and fender repair with, fiberglass and stuff. And then my dad did other side jobs. And then that's how my dad learned the knowledge of fiberglass and got into that aspect of the business. Now, this is prior to him meeting Aldericio. And then once he met Aldericio, they looked for a little a shop, not necessarily a big factory. We used to call it the factory, but it was a small business. It wasn't big business. It was a small business. If I had to guess, I would say it was probably about 4,000 square feet.
Okay. And the house you're talking about that Irv had, wasn't that out by Dempster? It was on a cul-de-sac.
Well, no, it was actually a little bit closer, I think, to Des Plaines, because at that time, in the downtime, what we used to do, and that was like one of my very first introductions to firearms, is we would go sometimes. Obviously, I was a problem kid sometimes, so we would go to Warren Osborne's house, and in the factory, what they would had a little garage. And what we used to do is shoot river rats at the Des Plaines River.
Me too.
So that's how I remember where Warren Osborne lived. And that was like my very first introductions to firearms, and actually the very first time I got to shoot.
Later on, didn't you go to Jerry Bell's in Franklin Park?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Bell's. Yeah,
Bell's?
we did. We actually,
Jerry
yes,
Bell
we
had
used to
Jerry
go there
Bell's
quite
Sporting
often.
Goods?
Yes, yeah. My father bought a few firearms from Bell's. As a matter of fact,
Yeah, we have the
my brother
receipts,
has,
though.
I think, one of the guns. My brother has one of the guns that they purchased, a .38 revolver from
Mhm.
Bell's.
Yeah, we have all the receipts too from Bell's.
Yeah, that was on
And
Manheim
some of the
Road,
other places.
if you
too.
remember, Red, that was
I
on
used to shoot
Manheim
there.
Road by the O'Hare Airport. Yeah.
I used to
I
shoot.
think everybody used to shoot there, didn't they?
It was on Manheim in Franklin Park, and a big
Yeah.
sign, Jerry Bell, and he had a Japanese guy that worked there too, Nico or somebody like that. He was a Japanese guy, very meticulous about firearms.
That place was so run down though.
Yeah.
Like the
Wow.
range downstairs was
It
terrible.
burnt down 3
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
Isn't that
Yeah.
Nick? Isn't that what you do now?
So let's get back
tactical,
on the story
dealer?
here.
What's it?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yes. I'm a wholesaler.
Gotcha.
Tactical firearms
And what I do is I sell firearms to retail markets.
Okay.
So I don't have a lot. I don't work in a gun shop anymore. I used to when I was a kid, which my brother remembers. I've got started in firearms by the time I was outside of my dad. I was involved in firearms from the age of like 15, 16, when I first started to work at this gun shop on Irving Park Road, which was right by our house, which was Gun World. And I worked there till I actually left Chicago.
And that was
and
owned
moved to
by
Florida.
ex-cop, right?
Right, a street cop by the name of Jerry Soskin.
Mm-hmm.
And Jerry Soskin was the one that introduced me heavily into firearms and taught me everything about guns and ammunition. Jerry Soskin, obviously because he was a street cop, one of his pet peeves with me, he took me under his wing and, told me, hey, listen, we're going to teach you everything there is to know about firearms. But before we do that, we want to teach you everything we know about ammunition. And ammunition was the key to firearms.
Right.
Because he used to teach me how to do short loads, all facets of the gun business, but reloading specifically and making my own ammunition and knowing the distances to carry that projectile and how far and the grains of gunpowder and how far that projectile would go and the accuracy of that projectile. Unbeknownst to me, what he was trying to teach me, but exactly. But I was learning it and became an expert at it.
So quickly,
Which you are today.
If you guys are just coming in, hit the like button. Chronic Smokes asking, are both of these Daniel's sons? So yes, if you're just tuning in, this is Nicholas and Joey Seifert, and they are Daniel Seifert's son. Daniel was killed by the Chicago outfit, and which we're getting to that. We're just getting a little backstory though as to what Daniel's involvement was. So let's continue on. Be sure though, guys, hit that like button.
Let's continue on.
So getting back to
I remember
the time.
This is what they had $1 that they skimmed off of a loan, a Vegas loan. And some of that money, I believe, went into your father's business.
Well, went through it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they were skimming the pension fund.
Well, didn't they actually help him build the new factory, the big factory?
No.
Didn't they put up?
Well, what had happened was they were working with International Fiberglass, and what they were doing was cleaning the skim, and they would run the money through International Fiberglass. And at the same time they were working with International Fiberglass, they were starting to set up another company in Deming, New Mexico, called the American Pale Company.
Gaylor Products.
And that's
right.
Well, Gaylor Products was another company that was owned by Harold Lurie, who Harold Lurie was working very closely with Tony Spilotro in that manufacturing company. And Spilotro was the one that was actually embezzling money from that factory and also doing the same thing they were doing at International, but International was under Joey Lombardo's red flag, and where Gaylor Products came under Anthony Spilotro's red flag. So Spilotro was very tight knit with Harold Lurie. And what my brother and I have found out is that, they always thought that my dad was the government informant and was kind of looking at my dad as maybe betraying them. But really it wasn't. What my brother and I found out is Harold Lurie was actually the government informant and spilled the beans on everybody, including my father.
It started way.
And then the FBI Then the FBI went to my father and said, "Hey, we know all about your BS. you're not going to, con us or anything like that. We've got another informant that has implicated you in this outfit skim and this embezzlement of the Teamsters Union. And that's how they pressured my dad into cooperating.
Yeah, because they already had the books.
Now, this
in the
was
background
after
from
Phil had
Harold
passed
Lurie.
away, right?
Yeah.
This is after Phil had passed away, Milwaukee Phil?
Yeah. That's right.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, because that was a
in
layer of
between the
protection.
timeline.
That was a huge layer of protection for my dad. And once he passed away,
Right.
there was
that's why
there was no protection left.
Yeah, to give you an idea, this was the timeline between El Doricio dying in 71 and then 73. It was during those 2 years that all this complication started going on between American Pail Company, International Fiberglass, and Gaylor Products.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously funneling the money through those companies and getting it to Las Vegas. And then getting it out from Teamsters loans so that they could put it into their own pockets.
This is your father, correct?
If I remember right.
Yeah.
That is?
Yeah, that's our father.
One quick question.
That's Dan.
Who is this?
Well, that's the guy that's forward to us. That is my dad. The one that's sitting right next to him is my Uncle Tom. And then the gentleman that's sitting with his hand in his chin is my Uncle Bob.
Okay. Now I see now I see the resemblance there. Now I can pick that out and see that you're okay. Got it.
It was my father. It was my father and his two brothers, his two older brothers. My father was the youngest one of the family as well.
That was when they got married. My mom and him got married. That was
exactly.
That's where the party was.
I was going to say that looks like a wedding. He had the corsage and everything.
Right.
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely.
In Melrose Park.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, got it.
So then after that time, let's
New
say
Mexico, I was told that by the guys I was hanging around with, they were making fun. It was easy going. That was before anything happened. I was told that Irv Weiner and Tony Spilotro used to travel back and forth to Deming, New Mexico. They had their own 707 that they bought.
Yeah, I was just going to tell you, we have the paperwork that shows the company with Ron DeAngelis and stuff. They bought a house out there and they bought an airplane so they could travel back and forth. Yeah, we have the paperwork.
It was a luxury plane, guys. It was a luxury plane. It was, I never saw any 707 like that in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, we have the paperwork on that.
So take us past there. Take us back there in what you know. We'll get to Joey. We'll get to what you know about the actual incident after Nick explains. You want to do a
sure? So then,
Nick?
like I said, then during that time, in the time that El Doricio, prior to El Doricio dying, my father was very close knit with these guys. Everything was good at International Fiberglass, like I told you. And then they were working with two other companies, the American Pail Company and Gaylor Products. So during that time, everything was still very good. And then El Doricio passed away. Well, even when El Doricio passed away.
Yes.
Even in prison. But even when El Doricio passed away, my dad still had good relations with the outfit because of Joe Lombardo. Him and Joe Lombardo still kept a good relation. And it wasn't until this thing with Irwin Weiner that the true story wasn't coming out. They always thought that maybe my dad was the informant. And here, lo and behold, it was actually Irwin Weiner, it was
Harold Lurie.
Harold Lurie. And Harold Lurie was talking to the feds. And even Tony Spilotro found out about it after the fact. And then that's when the FBI also put pressure on my dad because they knew that my dad was not necessarily a mobster and potentially may cooperate because of their information that they had from Harold Lurie. So then, lo and behold,
Now,
then
wasn't
my
this
father
a
did
combined
start.
effort? Wasn't this
Combined with
wasn't
who,
this a
Red?
I
combined
believe it
effort
was.
between the FBI and the IRS CID?
Yes. It was the IRS that
Yes,
started.
yes,
That's what I thought.
Yeah, it was the IRS that
Yeah.
started.
Yeah.
Which is probably
and then
worse
obviously
than the
after
FBI.
that, obviously after that, around 1973, my dad's relationship with the outfit and Joe Lombardo became strained.
Hmm.
And then after 1973, there were many threats and threats on both halves. And that's why actually they decided to kill my dad, is because they knew they couldn't.
Before the threats, didn't Joey try to come around and say, come on, you don't need to do this, and
Yeah.
we'll take care of you or something like that?
Oh, many, many times. Yeah.
My father, Joe Lombardo, went above and beyond of what he would normally do for other people.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Lombardo went to my father and said, "Hey, listen, you gotta fucking cut this shit out. Stop it," And even Joe Lombardo went to my uncles and said, "Hey, listen, you got to talk to Danny and talk him down from doing this bullshit, because you know what's going to end up happening, and I don't want that to happen."
Square him away.
Yeah,
Right.
and so Joe Lombardo, went to my Uncle Bob and said, "Hey, listen, you got to talk to Danny. We can't have this. You got to talk to him and tell him he might have to do a couple years." Well, my dad didn't want to do that. And then my Uncle Tom, who's the older brother that you saw in that one picture, my Uncle Tom even got involved and actually came to live with us for like a month to talk to my dad every day about, "Hey, you got to put this thing to bed. You're not going to come out a winner on this. There aren't going to be any winners. You're going to end up having to do your 2 years. And then when you come out, you'll probably end up having to work for Jackie Cerrone, but you'll still be in the clique." And my dad he wasn't going to do that. He didn't trust Jackie Cerrone. And by this time, he didn't really trust Joe Lombardo. He would listen to Joe and what he was talking about, but he didn't trust him. And then that's when I think things went south. And then obviously then there were threats that the outfit made to my dad. And then because my dad was cocky, he made threats to them as well, And so that's when they decided
He was only 29 years old.
Yeah, he was a
right.
kid.
So
He was only
that's when they
29
decided, "Hey,
years
listen."
old.
Right. So that's when the outfit decided they had to take this to the next level because the threats weren't working. And so that's what they did. They developed this plan on killing him. And if you noticed and you look at the FBI documents and everything else, this plan was heavy. This was a heavy hit. They used, usually like Irwin Weiner with Alan Dorfman, the Dorfman hit. They only had 2 guys. They walked up, put 7 bullets in his head, and walked away. This hit with my father, there were 12 people that were involved with this because they wanted to make sure, because my dad was a tough guy, and they wanted to make sure that my dad was not going to get away on this. And that's where, like you had discussed with me, Red, before.
Yeah.
They wanted to. That's when Frank Schweitz tried to handcuff him in that little corridor at the beginning of the office. But Frank Schweitz, I don't think, knew how tough my dad was or wiry my dad was, and my dad managed to escape.
But Tony
Spilotro knew how tough my dad was. That's why Tony Spilotro did not hesitate to shoot my dad in the cheek immediately. Spilotro knew what my dad was like. So that's why Spilotro, the first thing they did is they didn't say, "Hey, anything to him." Boom, shot him right in the cheek. And then they realized that during that time, because they were pistol whipping him, that obviously Spilotro didn't kill him. He was still alive after being shot in the cheek. And that's when Frank Schweitz tried to handcuff him, because what they were going to do is handcuff him, take him off the site, throw him in the trunk of a car, and then take him to another location to try to torture him for information of what he told the FBI. But obviously, we know that didn't go well.
Right.
They ended up chasing him, and then, Hanson shot him with the shotguns, and you know the story.
Quick question. Chronic Smoke. Yeah. The story I heard is one of you guys were present during the murder of your father. Is that true? And who was there?
That was me.
It was you, Joey. Yeah. Okay.
Also, there's another guy.
Joey, why don't you give us your recreation of what happened that day?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and Joey, what were you going to say? What comment did you see?
Really quick, Bud Gibson says the local cops were they paid off. Yeah, they were all working together with the outfit.
Oh, yeah.
So they all knew what was going on, channels and everything.
Can you walk us through that day?
Yeah.
Joey?
So that day was, I was only 4. But
hooky.
Yeah, they had me in this school that was not far from the factory, and it was like in the basement of an old church. And I didn't like it there. I didn't like it at all. So that day I was, going to play hooky. I was going to stay home, play with my Matchbox cars, and have a good day doing nothing, being a kid. And remember getting to the factory. I don't remember actually going inside, but I remember being on the floor getting ready to play with my cars and stuff. And that's when people bust in, they come through the back door. And this is a super small office. It's not big at all. It's got a desk, a very small bathroom, and there's room for another desk. And then there's
it's just handed on to an industrial building.
Yeah, it's in an industrial park
building, right?
Yeah. And that industrial building's still there. It's still very active, and the same space is still there and the whole thing. But
now, wasn't the original place burned?
No, that was the other place.
Wasn't there a fire at the original place? Oh, okay.
International.
That was international.
So what happened morning?
So from there, I'm playing with my cars and stuff. My mom starts making coffee. People bust in. 2 of them go to the front, and one person grabs my mom and I to put us in this little bathroom. And I'm telling you, it's tiny. It's like big enough for one and a half people. And that's what we were. And then he stood in the doorway and, basically said, you guys stay here, blah, blah, blah. They're fighting in the front. They end up taking off. I don't know where I went from there, but my mom went for the desk to get her gun. For some reason, she left it in the desk that day to get her gun. And she went for the front door, because that's where they all ran out. And she said when she opened the door, somebody with a shotgun turned and pointed it at her, and she just closed the door, locked it, and went back inside and started calling the police. Now, in those days, there was no 911. You're actually dialing the police.
That was Joey Hansen.
Yeah, Joe Hansen, right?
Right.
It was a nickel-plated shotgun. Yeah. And then the next thing I remember is I'm in the police car and we're leaving, and they drive us right past. He's laying in the grass.
Did you actually see him, or did they shelter you from him and scuttle you into a police car?
No, I saw him once they drove us right past him. He was laying in the grass. The police drove right past.
Oh, wow.
There was no shelter or nothing. So, me as a little kid, I'm like, I don't know what he's doing. Maybe he's sleeping. He got tired or something. Like, I had no idea.
Wow.
And then we go to pick up Nick and Kathy from their school.
So all these years, from 1974, the government really knew who did it.
They knew that day,
but it never went to trial.
Yeah,
they showed up at Joe Lombardo's house, and they knock on the door, and he answers the door, and he's reading the fucking newspaper. They knew. They just couldn't prove it. That's all. They couldn't prove it. But that was the first house they showed up at.
It was a cold case file. It was a cold case file that got solved in Family Secrets.
It was a cold case
all
file
those
because I went back
1974
to the 2000s. Yeah. Because I went back when I was in high school, and I went back to the Bensonville police station to ask questions, and they're like, "I'm sorry, we can't give you any information on an ongoing case." I'm like, "Ongoing? Like, it's been 30 fucking years. What's ongoing? What are you guys doing?" And they just kept saying the same thing. They couldn't give any information about it.
Well, they had
So-
to cover the other people that were involved.
Yeah, oh, sure. Yeah.
Northside
Yeah.
Drive asks, why blame one person for all of this? The man you blamed didn't give the green light.
We don't blame one person for all of it. It was a group.
Meaning
It
Joey
was a whole
Lombardo.
group.
Okay.
He wasn't the one that
But
made
if
the
I'm
final
not
call.
mistaken,
'Cause
Nick, did you walk the streets, Nick, looking for Joey?
Yeah. Yes, I did.
Nick?
Well, actually, I was looking for everybody that was connected to it, not just Lombardo, but all the information that I'd gotten on many other people led to Lombardo. All that information just funneled right to Joey Lombardo. And that's where I felt, if this information would have been somebody I didn't know, who knows what would have happened. But because all this information that I'd collected for 30 years, obviously Lombardo was involved. And I was kind of close to Lombardo growing up. Joe Lombardo, my parents would, go out to different functions and stuff. And rather than calling the neighborhood girl to babysit us, a lot of times Joe Lombardo would just take me and took me to Ringling Brothers Circus, or would take me to the Cubs games or the White Sox games. And that's how that relationship developed. So I got close to him, not only at the factories, by talking to him all the time and hanging out with him. And then on different events, he would take us out, and that's where the betrayal set in. And throughout the 23, 25 years, I always, every person that I looked at that had something to do with it, whether they were, like Jeeps and stuff like that, where, that guy Jeeps that drove
Jeeps
one of the
was
getaway
there.
cars. I was looking at,
He was there.
Yeah,
He was in a
I was
block
looking
car.
at him. Everybody that I looked at, everything spider webbed, but the initial of the spider web always started out with Joe Lombardo. So I understand that Joe Lombardo didn't want this to happen, and it was, in a sense, business. And he did everything he could to try to control it. He didn't, but I was betrayed. And the reason why I went after Joe Lombardo and everybody else, if I could have, I would have even gone after Frank Schweitz, because even when I went to Schweitz's arraignment, I wanted to try to get at him some way, somehow.
that was pretty funny.
And I was always going after these guys, but every time I would turn a corner, I'd read or understand, or someone else would tell me, hey, you got to look at this guy. You got to look at that guy. He was also involved,
Yeah. And to my knowledge, going back to Joe, that he was told to not even be there that day. And he went for a specific reason.
From my side, I always believed that he went there to protect you.
So I'm going to share that.
He
So
went there to keep
besides
you alive.
you told me that. You told me that originally, and I've talked to.
I think I was the first one to tell you that.
You
Was
were
I,
the first
Joey?
person to tell me. You were the first one. And then I've talked to other people that have said the same thing. And I was just going to comment on Don Pozzalo about Joey showing compassion to me and my mom. He wasn't showing compassion. He purposely showed up that day because he knew that the crew that was hired, they would kill everybody. And like you had
Correct.
said, Red, and a couple of other people have told me, the only reason that my mother and I ever survived was because Joe was there that day.
Quickly, guys,
And at
I
that
just want
time,
to
he was
interrupt.
street boss.
I just want to interrupt for a second. Cindy Workman, thank you very much for the super sticker. Chronic Smoke, thank you for the super sticker. I'm glad that you guys are enjoying the content today. We have Danny and Nick Seifert. They're the sons of Daniel Seifert. He was
Joey.
murdered in
Joey.
1974. For those of you that are just coming in, and before we go any further, be sure to hit the like button if you're just coming in. And Big Mo wants to know, did any of these cops get in trouble for covering it up?
Nope. No.
No.
But
No.
back to one thing that I was saying
No.
about Joe, and that Red was, definitely the first person telling me that. But I was also told by other people too, is because he did go that day and what he did, that he wasn't supposed to be there, that he had ended up getting passed over in the future for moving up, the ranks, that it put a sour taste in other people's mouths because he did disobey them.
It was my understanding that Carter was very upset that he was there.
Yes, very upset.
It was my understanding that Tony Carter was very upset that he was there.
Yes, because he's the one that told him not to be there.
Right.
Who actually gave the order? Right. Do you guys know?
But then Joe Lombardo knew that.
Hey, Ricardo.
Joey Iopa.
Ah.
Tony Ricardo actually gave the order.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, Joey, take us down.
How it transpired is Joey Iopa went.
What's that, Red?
Take us a little bit further. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. What were you saying?
Okay. Did I lost my train of thought for a second. After the incident took place, the murder, you were taken by the police, Bensenville police. Were they?
Were they what?
Joey?
Yeah.
Where did they bring you? The Bensenville police.
So my mom, during this whole thing, after she finally got through to the police station, she ended up calling my aunt because my aunt lived extremely close. So she said what happened. So my aunt came there. She actually got there before the police, but who's the first person that pulls in the parking lot? John Drummond. He just happened to be in the area, and he said they had no idea what was going on, but he got it over whatever scanner or whatever, and they happened to be in the area, and they pulled in. But my mom didn't talk to him at that point. So my aunt got there.
I don't think your mom wanted to talk to anybody. She didn't
want to talk to anybody. Yeah, she wanted to be with my aunt because she knew my aunt was her some kind of safety. And so we got into a police car, and one police car, my aunt followed. We went to pick up Nick and Kathy from school. And then from there, we ended up going to my grandparents' house in Melrose Park. And we all stayed there. And I think from there, my mom and my aunts ended up going to the police station because they had to, make some statement and stuff.
Fill out the reports, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, all of that crap. We have all those files and stuff.
Would you both agree? Would you both agree that this was like a military execution?
Hell yeah. Yeah, without question. I mean, they had spotters along the whole way. Yeah, this was
radios.
Radios, police. I mean, this was no small time, hit.
Wow.
This was set up. Lots of cars involved in the whole thing.
Paulie Dibbs is asking, at what age did you guys discover that
money
related or who the outfit really were?
Mine wasn't until high school, and that's just because I didn't start asking questions really until high school.
What was your reaction to that? I mean, when you found out that it was, it was all organized crime and your father was involved, I mean, was that
For me, it was just more interest. That just sparked even more interest of starting to, we didn't have Google and computers and stuff. You go to the library and you pull the little cards and pull newspaper articles and stuff. And, you can't get much from that, but it's a start,
Right.
So that was it was limited.
Did both of you guys have trouble with making friends and getting into relationships because of
that? I got my whole life.
Like?
Yeah, my whole life. Yeah, because you don't trust anybody. And on top of it, I went to high school.
Yeah, exactly.
and I went to high school with one of Spilotro's nieces. And I was in that area, so it was for me. It was always really difficult with relationships and friends, and because it seems like, and I'm sure if you're from Chicago, you'll agree, everybody knows somebody.
Yeah,
literally everybody knows somebody. It doesn't matter what town you're in. It doesn't matter if you're in the north of Chicago, south, anywhere. Everybody knows somebody, and it seems like through my life, every time I meet somebody, the story will come out and be like, "Oh, I used to know blah blah blah," constantly. It's literally been my entire life.
Wow. Yeah,
Now,
that's
that's got to be
not just with like guys, girl, any relationship that you go and try and make, and you have to tell a person, "Hey, yeah, by the way."
So here's a funny story. I actually became friends with them because of this. But when I was much older, I had kids, and we were living in Deerfield. And while we were living in Deerfield, my daughter was going to school, and she becomes very close with this one particular girl. They're like best friends, can't separate them. Always, super having fun and blah, blah, blah. And she says, "Yeah, I was over at blah, blah, blah's house. We were playing and blah, blah, blah." And she says how her grandfather gets these phone calls from all these weird people. And I'm like who? Because that's, first thing I do is, where are you at? And who are you friends with, And she says, I don't know. One night she says, R. Kelly called the house and asked for her grandfather. And another night, this one called. And another night, this one called. And I'm like, what's her grandfather's name? It was Eddie Jensen.
Oh, no. Small world.
Super small world. But we actually became really close friends after that. But it was just, it was a very small, just weird world.
Nick, did you have problems in relationships, like finding a date or anything like that because of this?
Yeah, well, actually, what it become is because I was on a hunting excursion with these guys, trying to find them and everything else, and hunting them down. I did get married, but never told my wife anything about this situation or who I was or anything. So she never knew anything. And then one day I was getting ready to go to work, and we get a knock at the door. And this is just prior to the family secrets trial. And here it was. The FBI was at my door wanting to talk about organized crime stuff. And my wife is like, "Why the hell would they want to be talking to you about anything that had to do with organized crime?" I mean, at this time, I was in the arms business, but these guys had no problem. As Red knows, that's what they do. They try to exploit your weakness, and they could tell right away that no one knew anything about it. So they started, right there at the door, talking names and everything else, and saying, "Hey, we want to talk to you. We could talk to you here, or you could come down to the FBI headquarters in Tampa, whatever you want." So naturally, now my wife is angry and upset because I'd never discussed this with her. And the reason why I never discussed it with her is just because, like what my brother said, throughout our whole lives, we always had so much trouble making friends. No one wanted to be friends with us because of A, my dad was connected to the mafia, or B, then that time span went where B, my dad got killed by the mafia. So they didn't want to talk to us because of that. So we always had trouble with relationships and making friends. It's like living a double-edged sword. And it was just always a rough life.
Did you have a son with that wife? Did you have a son with that wife?
Yes, I did, actually. Wife? Yes.
So,
yeah,
I know we talked about him. He liked the deer hunt.
Exactly. Avid hunter. He loves to hunt.
You guys have a book, Deadly Associates.
Yep.
Yes.
All about.
And we just did a documentary on the Reels channel.
And you had a documentary.
And we did a documentary on on the Reels channel.
David Grimpy wants to know, is there any way he can get his book signed by you guys?
Yeah, where's he at?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Where does he live?
Yeah, we'd be happy to do
Give
that.
him a place. Okay, I'll type it in. Where does he mail it? Where does he order it at? Do you have a
Can you
website?
buy it? Do you guys have a website up?
I have a website up where you can buy autographed copies, but I don't have it active right now. You can get them on Amazon, but they're not going to be signed. Depending on where Dave lives, we can talk about that.
All right. So
Dave's in the US.
Dave, you can always contact Adam at VegasSpecialtyTours.com, and we'll forward that around your message to him. Okay.
Yeah, you can just forward it to one of us, and we'll take care of it. There's another guy too that said Paulie Dibbs was asking, did we ever befriend any of the other victims?
Yes.
And we have. I mean, we met obviously through the trial. We met a lot of the victims, and we still keep in, somewhat touch.
Interesting.
Gallery.
That's I don't know. It's not a good thing, but I mean, I guess it is, because you can relate to each other about something, that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I find the most interesting thing is with everybody you meet, not just the victims, but everybody else that we've come across. My first question is, tell me about your childhood, because I always compare my childhood to everybody else's childhood. And I always want to see like where the difference is. And then when you go from outfit involved people, I say the same thing. Tell me about your past, tell me how things happened, how things started. And because I think it is an interesting story, not just for people that got involved in the outfit, but also people that were killed by the outfit. Is there's some interesting stories there about how people get involved and how people deal with things.
Yeah. It's
looking back.
Did you guys all speak at the sentencing?
Yeah, that trial, as Red will tell you,
Yes.
and I'm sure he's told you a million times, that family secret trial, that was a circus. Like every day was a circus there.
Yeah.
It was unreal.
Did you watch me testify?
I wasn't. No.
Did you guys watch me testify?
I wasn't able to.
No, because at that time I lived in Florida.
They only let me come on certain days.
I testified against Joey.
Yeah, they only let us.
Yeah,
and that he was a part of the outfit.
Yeah, that was a circus. There was one day that we were that we weren't able to go through the main doors, and one of the FBI agent handlers, she's telling us, telling everybody as a group, we're going to walk you through the courtroom, and all the defendants will be sitting in their seats, and we're going to walk you through the middle of it, and then you'll go sit down. And they're saying, and we're not going to have any issues, are we? And of course, she's looking through everybody at me. Like, okay, I won't do anything, I swear. I mean, at that point, it was just,
I did not get along with her. That's the only female, that's the only agent I did not get along with.
She was really good with us.
Neither did I.
You're talking about Tracy, right?
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was really flew me back home.
She was really good to us. She was really good to my mom. We only had literally, I would say, one issue where her and I got into it, but besides that, they were all really good to, obviously because they wanted her to testify. They were all really good with her, with my mom.
Street Stories is in the house. It's good to have you with us today, Anthony. A luminous grin. Hello, everybody. Hit the like button if you're just coming in. We have Joey and Danny Seifert with us. I'm sorry, Nicholas and Joey Seifert with us. They were Daniel's son. I'm gonna get it all screwed up, Red. Quick question. That I saw in the comments. Did you guys feel the sentencing that you finally had some kind of sense of justice, or when you first heard about the trial happening?
No, I mean I was very vocal about that. That was just a stroke show. I mean, not at all. I mean, they ask you that question, and it's like
coming.
Yeah, I mean, it was 40 years at that point, and one of the other FBI agents said, he actually said it in our documentary. He's like, we asked that question, but what kind of sense of justice can you really get? What they're really asking is, do you think we did a good job? Are you happy with the outcome?
Yeah.
Right. Wow.
And there were a lot of people, obviously, that didn't get their killer, killers that were the outfit guys that killed their family members didn't get convicted. There were a lot of, obviously, rightfully so,
his son was there when you were interviewed.
Who's that?
Right, Tony Ortiz.
Yeah, Tony Ortiz. Yeah, the Ortiz family. Who's the other? The big muscle, ripped up big muscle. I think it was Andriaki, his son or nephew or something.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Do you remember who that is, Red?
But there wasn't really justice. It was justice late. Very late. It should have happened years ago. It was 1974 till actually it started in 2002, but 2005 is when the indictments came out.
Right.
Pardon?
And it didn't wrap up till what? But even at that point, I mean,
it took years for Mitch to put that together.
What kind of justice really is that? I mean,
yeah, no, to 100%.
Suffered all.
So
I would say a major inconvenience, a major.
we had our suffering, as you call it, or whatever anybody wants to call it, but at the same point, I don't feel like the people that really did the damage were held responsible for it. I mean, you're holding Joe responsible for it. I mean, he's like, 80-year-old broke guy. Like,
they were dead.
Yeah, I mean, everybody else is dead. Like the guys that really did the damage. You know what? I'll tell you this. I felt more justice when I was in high school, and this is still the weirdest story to me. In high school, when the Spilotros were found in a cornfield, they actually put that over the intercom system in the school, saying that this is breaking news for whatever reason. And I actually felt more justice that day, and I felt bad for the niece that I was going to school with, because she, of course, goes running out of school upset. But there was more justice then, hearing what happened, than there was, in Family Secrets trial.
I hope this isn't too personal. Chronic Smoke's asking this. How did your mom do after this?
Terrible. I mean, tears her apart. That's, for one, the business is shot at that point. Mm-hmm. Then, she has the three of us that she has to worry about. She has to figure out how to make money at that point to raise everybody.
And then the IRS,
and she also
confiscated everything that you owned.
Oh, they took everything, cleared out, bank accounts, everything. And then at that point, she's still looking over her shoulder every day, wondering, are these assholes going to come back or what? So it was.
Did you guys go off to Florida to get away?
No, Nick did. My mom went for somewhere for a little while. I stayed with my grandparents.
Okay.
Wow.
But I mean, at that point, if anybody suffered, Nick and I can talk about our stories and how much we suffered. But if there's anybody that really suffered, it was my mom.
Yeah.
She was, through the whole thing, from when it started to the end. I mean, that was a terrible
she knew
trip.
what really happened. She just couldn't talk about it.
I mean, yeah, she was pretty comfortable, but she was also not stupid. She's not going to say anything. I mean, she's not dumb. At that point, she's not going to say, yeah, I know it was Joey, because it was Joey's voice and it was how Joey walked and blah, blah, blah. I mean, somebody's presence, but she's not dumb either. She's not going to say, yeah, that was him.
Wow.
Now,
after the incident, she developed.
Go ahead, Nick.
Well, she developed depression. This was before they acknowledged depression and stuff like that. And then she developed drinking. She would drink to try to, take away some of the problems, and then developed a drinking problem. But these are all things she didn't do well at all. And like I said before, neither did any of us. We were kind of, the victims, obviously. I know my dad was a victim, But the families are really the victims that have to kind of pick up the pieces and move on, or try to move on. And that's what's been very difficult for my brother and I, is to actually move on with your life. It's very difficult. And it was very difficult for me because I was the oldest of all the kids and had a little bit more of a closer relationship with these guys, or knew these guys. So it was very difficult to actually move on. And then once I started to investigate it, then I realized, because at that time, I was very close to my brother. And I knew that I was rattling some cages. My uncles were giving me information. I was very vocal when I would approach people, looking for people and everything else. So that's when I knew I had to move to Florida and get away from Chicago, because I knew that it was going to create some problems for my brother down the road.
Didn't the FBI talk to
my
you
brother
about
had
that? Say it'd
already.
be a good idea? Nick,
I'm sorry?
did the FBI talk to you and say maybe it'd be good if you left?
No, they didn't.
No?
They
Okay.
didn't say that. They didn't say that at all. Actually, it wasn't until I kept coming back to Chicago to look for answers that I ran into some FBI agents. And, my brother, I didn't necessarily really get along with Tracy Belimo. She was dogging me from day one. Every time I went someplace, every time I got on a plane, every time I turned the key of my car, she was on the fucking phone. And it got to be a pain in the ass. The one FBI agent that I did get along with was Chris Williams. But when Chris Williams turned around and ended up got off that case, off the organized crime task force, and actually went into gang-related duties, on Chicago street gangs, they kind of passed the ball on to Tracy Belimo. And so during these times, that I was flying in and out of Chicago, Tracy Belimo was like on me all the time. Every time I turned around, and actually one time I was sitting in the parking lot. I had a rental car, and I pulled into the parking lot of this IHOP, and I was just getting ready to turn off the car to go inside to have breakfast. And she's knocking on my window. What are you doing here? And she made me sign all these papers. Every time I came to town, I had to sign papers that I wasn't going to, cause them any problems. But I didn't get along with her very well.
One of the guys
I wrote about her in my book. She was the only female agent that I didn't get along with. She was very aggressive.
One of the guys on the feed, Goran Todolcevic. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. He asked, when did Joe report his lost wallet? And that was literally it was either the same day or the day after with Anthony Pellicano.
Tony Pellicano, huh?
Yep.
Here we go.
Tony, yeah. And if you look at the FBI papers, and if even that letter that he sent Carol Marine, Joe Lombardo, he sent Carol all those papers with what transpired, and you look at court records, Anthony Pellicano was the person that wrote Joe Lombardo's alibi and submitted that alibi to the Chicago Police Department, who then forwarded it to the FBI. Anthony Pellicano was involved from day one. Wow. From day one. If you look at any of those court papers or any of those 302s and everything else, Anthony Pellicano's name came up back in the 70s. Before he even went out to California and developed a name for himself, he was working for the outfit in the 60s and the 70s. And Joe Lombardo, he was already on the outfit's payroll, Anthony Pellicano. And Joe Lombardo went to him because he was a private investigator at the time, and he was somewhat credible, according to, the crooked Chicago Police Department. So Anthony Pellicano was the one that came up with this alibi, and then questioned the waitress that supposedly served Joe Lombardo breakfast that morning, and took down her information. If you dig back, you'll see that this was they covered all the bases. This wasn't just a well orchestrated hit on the act of the murder, but it was well orchestrated on the timelines and the alibis. And that's why Judge Zagel, that's why Judge Zagel would not allow this information to come into the court on Anthony Pellicano, because Joe Lombardo was bragging that he had this alibi from Tony Pellicano. But Judge Zagel wouldn't allow it. It wasn't admissible in court.
A lot of people don't understand how many pretrial motions Family Secret was.
Exactly.
So in the comment feeds, somebody said that was DeAndrea, was who I was talking about before, that family didn't get any justice for it. But I was sitting next to him in court when they were reading, guilty, not guilty. And it was super hard to hear that day. It was terrible. It was super hard to hear that day. And all I heard was not guilty. And he's like, what? And you see him grab the bench in front of him, like trying to lean forward and squeezing. And I'm watching like veins just pop. I'm like, this dude's going to explode. And he ended up hearing it. And, they took him out because he was beyond upset. He was furious. And when I ended up walking out, they had about, 10 guys around him. I'm like, you're going to need more than 10 guys to calm this guy down. I mean, it was sad that he didn't get the justice, but it was just another crazy situation, from that trial.
Bud Gibson, there was
another
1,300.
Yeah, 1,300.
A crazy.
Yeah.
A crazy thing that happened too during that trial when they were doing my dad's investigation, or doing the, discovery and all that stuff during the trial. My brother got up to go to the bathroom, so he left the courtroom. And then I left the courtroom to go down to the cafeteria to get a Coke, because, it got to be at one point where it got to be where it was a little boring. So that was a good time for my brother, obviously, to go to the bathroom, and I went down to the cafeteria to get a Coke. The courtroom freaked out. The federal marshals and everything else freaked out when they see my brother and I were both gone at the same time, thinking that perhaps maybe we were up to something. So they locked down that courtroom. Oh, yeah, they locked it down because, both my brother and I were not accounted for.
Red.
Here I am coming up out of the elevator with a Coke in my hand, and the FBI agents are just swarming us. And it was funny.
Red, were you there that day that they thought there was a bomb inside the courtroom?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
My mom and I
and Nick, what's his name? Kirk Calabrese's, the bombs are rats on his lawn, and all of a sudden he disappeared. That was 3 days before
inside the courtroom. The day that they thought there was a bomb in a briefcase in the courtroom.
Somebody called in a bomb threat.
No, okay, hold on. This is a different one. Right. So my mom and I, the victims, you sit not in the very front row, but in the second row. So we were all sitting there, and we're sitting next to, of all people, Pat Spilotro and a couple other people. And you always had these like weird, like courtroom groupies that would be there every day. And some weird guy
you mean the courtroom buffs?
Yeah.
The courtroom buffs?
Yeah. So one of them,
I don't like them at all.
But that one day, the one guy was there, and he leaves his briefcase tucked under the seat, and it happens to be under my mom and I. So we're like, I look down and I go, "Whose briefcase is?" I'm like, "Did you bring a briefcase?" And I didn't see it. My mom's like, "What are you talking about?" So she looks down and she goes, "Oh, Jesus." So I lean over to one of the victims coordinators, and I'm like, "Hey, there's a briefcase under my mom, and there's like nobody around." Like the guy got up and went to the bathroom or something. We're like, "This is gonna blow the courthouse up." It's just one of those stupid things. They ended up figuring it out. That it was just the guy went to the bathroom. He's one of those weird courtroom guys that just hangs out. It ended up being nothing.
It was very tight.
Yeah, it was crazy. Like every day was crazy there.
Yeah.
And the hallway going in, it was a circus.
It wasn't so. It was like lining up like somebody famous. They had lines to both doorways.
Wow.
I know.
They would go all the way
The
to the
walk of
elevator
shame.
bank. People would be waiting in line.
I came up through the FBI's elevator bank.
Yeah, you came up a
I
different
was
way.
on their floor.
Yeah.
I came up through theirs. I was staying in there, and I came up through them, and then came out, and I think there was just the agents and myself. And
Yeah, we used to come up the
They
regular.
had two agents in front of me. They had two agents in front of me, an agent on each side, two agents behind me. They just didn't want anybody to touch me.
Like you're the president.
Even John Drummond tried to reach up and say, "Hey, Red, how you doing?" And they knocked him down.
Really?
Yeah.
Can't knock down John. He's like a legend in Chicago.
He was just
He's
stepping
royalty.
up. He's going to shake hands with me, and somebody put a hand on him, put him down.
He's royalty.
It was bad.
Now, let me ask you a question, Red. Red, let me ask you a question. Now, when that happened, was Frank Schweitz still alive, or did he die already?
No, he died.
He was alive, but he wasn't there. He had brain cancer.
Right. He was already dead.
Right, but that's what I'm asking. No, I don't think he was dead yet before Red was at his first.
They were going
Right,
to have
he
him
was
in
not
Family
dead yet.
Secrets too.
He didn't. Right. When you first started to testify, I thought Frank Schweitz was still alive. He didn't die till
He was.
Just before. Yeah, he didn't die just because
2008
actually my
he
brother
died.
and I went to his arraignment as well. Yeah, so he didn't die until I thought just before the Family Secrets trial started.
You know, I got another interesting question. I don't know if Red, if you know that. I'm sure you do.
There's
Yeah.
About the trial, you know, once Nick got, I'm going to say, tricked into doing what he did, that he gave up a lot more murders that the government went after. Why is that? What happened to the other 13 or 18 murders that Nick gave them that they didn't pursue?
They didn't have enough to try it. They really didn't have enough to try it. There were no eyewitnesses. A lot of things, like John DeFranzio, he should have gone down in that trial.
Yeah, how did he escape by that one?
There were no eyewitnesses. There were no eyewitnesses. There's no way to try it. Even the things that Schweiss had told me on videotape, I thought they were going to go after him on Family Secrets. No, he was too ill to stand trial. He had cancer of the brain.
Yeah.
And then they said, his lawyer said, he'll be ready. He'll be ready. He'll be ready. He never got ready. He died.
You know, the stuff that they presented at trial at Family Secrets for our dad's murder, it was the same shit that they had back in the day. The only thing that was new is they had, they found one of the work cars and they found some ski masks. It's still in the trunk.
But they didn't have DNA back then. They didn't have DNA back then.
No, but they took it for Family Secrets.
Oh, yeah.
And
then the thumbprint on the title for Joey.
Yeah.
The thumbprint on the title for the car.
Yeah. Yeah. But that they had before. That wasn't new.
And the swab.
What the difference was,
they
lost all the political connections.
The swab they did for Family Secrets.
Well, Joey Lombardo had said, I'm not connected with any organized crime or anything else. He took an ad out in the paper.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. This completely debunked the whole thing. The tapes I had said, what do they think? I'm going to try and quote this accurately. She told me while he's sitting in my living room, what do they think? Just because Lumbo's and the things have changed? So they played that, and that kind of solidified the fact that it wasn't going.
Yeah.
Wasn't going at all.
Well, I think one of the things that changed was because the outfit had lost its political. The outfit had lost its political protection.
Yeah.
Versus like in the 70s when they first killed my dad, they had strong foothold in politics. And then when 2007 came along, Joey wasn't as powerful, I don't think, politically anymore. You know, because of the Senator Cannon thing and everything else, he lost some of his political protection. And that's why I think Mitch Mars and Marcus Funk were able to get an indictment and then a conviction. Because I don't think that they would have even gotten an indictment if it wasn't for the fact that they would have still had the political protection. You know, when a lot of these guys, you know, passed away, you know, the politicians of the first ward and everything else, they lost a big layer of skin, you know.
Yeah.
I like this guy.
If this is too personal,
Paulie Dibs.
Just say I don't want to answer it, but
Yeah,
I have a couple questions for both of you.
Okay.
The one question I'll have for you, Nick, is how did that affect your marriage when your wife found out?
Divorce. It was divorce. Yeah, wow. She immediately, because she was afraid for her life now for sure, because this was all going to court. And there was a big, you know, this was a landmark case in Chicago that filtered throughout the country. So she immediately thought, because it had to do with organized crime and everything else in Chicago, that her life
nothing to do with
and her.
How come you didn't tell me, Nick?
Right. Within a month, within 30 days, she filed for divorce.
Yeah. Wow.
And Joey, how did it affect your life?
You know, the best way at that point in time that I can explain things is my wife at that time.
There were rumors that you were drinking a little bit at the time.
I drink my whole life. I like alcohol. I was never an alcoholic, but you know, I get a little Irish in me, so you gotta have a little sometimes. But you know, at that point, my ex-wife, she was from like the Brady Bunch, and we were from like the Sopranos. It was just two different worlds, and once that all came up, you know, she got very scared, very upset, blah blah blah. Then you know, I'm focused on worrying about a bunch of other stuff, and now they want to go to my kids' schools just to, you know, make sure everything's secure and all that stuff. So it was a lot for her. We ended up getting divorced, but it wasn't really because of this. It was just it was a bunch of stuff just piled on top of it.
But basically, it didn't hurt. I mean, it hurt.
It didn't help
your relationship. No.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
It hurt your
because
relationship.
It was heightened alert.
So basically, both of you wound up getting divorced because of all the things that culminated through your lives.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Correct.
Relationships were the most difficult because I was always heightened alert, and this just like raised the bar at that point.
Paulie Dibs, were you guys, what were your guys' thoughts during the sweep up in the 80s? Did you feel it would have been significant in your case or not at all?
I didn't think so. I didn't think it was ever going to get solved. So I didn't really think so.
Wow.
I knew it was
because during the 80s and the 90s. Well, during the 80s and the 90s, that's when I was most active on going after these guys. Because, you know, I was already in the arms business and everything else and could develop, you know, contacts and then finding out people, you know, running them through the database of the ATF and everything else. So I could track, it became very easy for me to track people down. So during the 80s and the 90s, that's when I was most active of going after these guys. And that's when it actually led to more problems. And then I found out that the investigation was over, or was opening up, excuse me. But during the 80s and 90s, you have to understand everything that I've seen and everything that my brother and I've seen, the Pendorf conviction, Operation Straw Man, all these different things that got hit by the Chicago mob, they just kind of, yeah, Joe Lombardo went to prison on some of this stuff, but it never brought fruit to my dad's murder. So I never believed that they were ever going to prosecute.
That's how I felt about Schweiss, Nick. Right. all these things that he did.
So I
and
never
he
believed
died
that there
when
was going to be a conviction anytime. That's why I took things into my own perspective and went after these guys myself. It wasn't until 2000, when the Family Secrets trial came about, that I thought to myself, well, there's a good chance they might be able to get an indictment.
Now,
But
this is a
during the
good
80s
question
and
for
90s,
both.
no, I did not. Yeah.
This is a good question for both of you. When were you first approached, and were you approached by Mitch Mars?
So that
When
was
was
my
the
Well,
first
I
mom.
time you
myself
sat
was
down
never approached.
Go ahead, Nick.
I was never approached by Mitch Mars. I was approached by John Scully.
John Scully? Okay.
John Scully
John
was
was
the
a
first.
good man.
He was the first guy that I came into contact with. I'd never had met Mitch Mars until after they pulled me in. They pulled me into the Justice Department 2 times. The first time, I met John Scully, and then
Did
the
he
second
fly down to
time,
see you? Did he fly down to see you?
I'm sorry. No,
Did he
they
fly
flew me
down
to
to see you?
Chicago.
Okay.
No, they flew me to Chicago. John Scully flew me. They had Chris Williams come and get me and escort me to Chicago because they didn't think I'd show up. So they had to come. They went and got me and brought me there, and that's when I met John Scully. But I didn't meet Mitch Mars until the second time they pulled me into the grand jury.
Okay. I never went before the grand jury.
Yeah,
I
that's
never
my
went
did
before
mom
the
twice.
did.
grand jury.
Because the first time, yeah.
So when my mom
Well,
was
Mike,
Well,
the year they
they-
came to me was like the year they came to me was like in 2000.
yeah.
So they had this. They knew what they were doing way before it ever went to court.
Yeah.
So
Well, they
they
pulled me
approached
into
it.
the grand.
so they approached my mom. It was early on too, and we ended up going to a meeting, and that's where we met Mitch Mars, Scully, and I think Chris might have been there. Chris Williams might have been there, but I can't remember. And we all sat in a room, but it wasn't downtown. It was out in the Schaumburg area. And
You
that's
probably
the
a
first
hotel room,
approach.
just like me. Everybody went to hotel rooms.
Yeah. And that's where they approached, said, they'd like her to go to the grand jury. So we went to the grand jury first and then proceeded from there.
Quickly, Paulie Dibbs again.
It's an
Quick
excellent
question. Quick
You guys
question.
wrote an excellent book. You wrote an
Thank you.
excellent book.
Quick question. During the 80s and 90s, when you were investigating personally, did anyone ever threaten you or contact you?
That's
Well,
for you, Nick.
I
Yeah,
I was
quite a few times. I had some altercations quite a few times. One time there was a guy that came looking for me when I was at the gun shop, and he approached me to tell me. I don't think he didn't approach me that he was angry. He approached me that he felt that there was some information that I deserved to know, and he kind of gave me an idea of what had happened. He had no involvement, he said, but he wanted me to know what it was about and who was
He
involved.
heard it.
Then obviously there was, after that time, then I had altercations several times with some connected guys, because then I was digging for information. And during that time, you have to understand, I did not get married until I was later on in life, or had a son until I was later on in life. So I had my aspect was, I don't care if I live tomorrow or not. This was my only focus in life, was my father's murder and getting revenge. Because of my relationship with my father, I felt like I had to do this, because my father would, no matter what happened in the neighborhood, my father always had our backs, So there was no way that I could let these guys get away with this and not defend my father's name or defend my father's actions or anything. So I had to go after these guys to get some kind of closure. Not necessarily revenge, but I needed closure on this thing, and that's when I would have different altercations with people. And it wasn't until about I believe it was like 1999 that I went to Chicago and had another altercation with a guy. And then that's when the FBI flagged me. And I was in the alley, in the city, and the FBI threw me in the car and everything else because they wanted to arrest me for brandishing what they call brandishing a weapon in the city limits. Mm-hmm. And by this time, I'm an arms dealer. Okay, so I can carry a gun. I have all the paperwork, permits, and everything else. Class 3 license, a CWPs, everything to carry any kind of weapon wherever I want. And I told the FBI, he says, well, we're going to arrest you for brandishing a gun in the city of Chicago and this and that. And I said, unless you, cooperate with us and tell us what this is all about and everything else. I said to him, well, you already know what it's about because that's why I'm in the car, And then I told him, I said, you can't do anything to me for carrying a gun. And he got on the phone to his boss, and Chris Williams was in the car when this happened. And he got on the phone to his boss, and his boss says, I've got 3 words for you. Let him go. And they took me to Kedzie. There was a bridge right there on Kedzie Avenue, and they dropped me off right there. They didn't even take me anywhere. They didn't ask me where I wanted to go. They didn't take me back to my rental car or nothing. They just dumped me off on Kedzie Avenue. And obviously I found my way back home, but that was when I had one of the last altercations with anybody because I was looking for Joe Lombardo at the time.
A quick question. Just wanted
looking back.
Homer, just want to ask this from Homer. Give me a second.
Yeah, I was just looking at that one.
Yeah. Are your brothers still close? Are you guys still close to your dad's side of the family?
No, we don't actually know a lot. I've been doing a lot of genealogy and other stuff, and I've had a couple family members actually reach out to me on Facebook. But after the murder, everything was cut. Never saw anybody from that side of the family. So lately, I've been trying to get involved with people and meet them.
But I had close contact with my grandmother, my aunts, and my uncles during that time. Now, everybody in our family has passed away. My grandmother, well, my aunt died first, my Auntie Sis, and then my grandmother died. And then, cousins and everything else. Actually, my brother and I are probably one of the last of the Mohicans that are left. Everybody has passed on, even my Uncle Bob, that you did see did that interview in front of the Dirksen Federal Building. He did that interview for Associated Press, and he has since passed away as well.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Hello, world.
Nick,
you guys file a lawsuit against the city of Chicago to compensate for the First Ward's corruption?
So we've actually talked to a lot of people, not just against the city of Chicago, but against the FBI, against Bensonville, and a lot of other towns, and we cannot find anybody with big enough stones to take the case on. Even though we've been told by multiple people that, yeah, you definitely have a case, blah, blah, blah. There's nobody that is willing to take that on. Because I'm sure the feds and everybody else would just drag it out till everybody died. So
go ahead, Red. I'm
sorry.
Back,
looking back in your life, Joe, you were 4 years old.
Yeah.
Nick, how old were you? How old was your dad when you were born?
My dad was 16 years old. Yeah, my dad was 16 years old when I was born.
So you had a very close relationship. Yeah. You had a very close relationship.
Yeah.
Looking back, both of you, looking back, do you feel that your father made a major mistake in getting involved, or a major mistake by not just taking the time and going to prison?
I think making a mistake, not taking the time and going to prison. Just personally, because I think it was going to be a short stint. He wasn't going to be gone long. Joey would have taken care of the family. He's outside. He's always been known as a good guy, straight up guy, takes care of people, especially the people that take care of him. I think he, depending on the time, I mean, he just like everybody else should have done the time, came back out, and he would have went right back to business as usual
with no major losses.
I think personally that
he just would have lost some time. That's it.
Because I think personally, Joe Lombardo would have held true to his word. Because, Joe Lombardo kept telling him, hey, listen, you're going to get clipped for this.
Case where he didn't.
Yeah. And I think that if he would have listened to Joe Lombardo and took everything that Joe Lombardo tried to coach him on, took it a little bit more serious, because by this time, don't forget, Joe Lombardo was already an expert in dodging the government. I mean, he'd already had several implications and robberies and everything else, and he knew how to assert the government. So I think that if my father would have listened to him and just done his 2 to 4 years, he would have skated on this whole thing and probably would have been even more connected than he was at that time, which he was highly connected. I mean, they just didn't kill him, a guy on the street. My dad was highly connected and obviously knew a lot of information about the Chicago outfit for them to go through and do this. So,
I mean, the family was connected.
He would have even been more, right. He would have even been more of a connected guy because of listening to his handlers or Joe Lombardo and following Joe Lombardo's orders, but he didn't.
They would have.
So I think that's where my father's mistake is because my father knew all along what was happening. And my father knew all along about the scams and everything else, the consequences. So it wasn't like my father was some unbeknownst, uninvolved witness, so to speak. He knew everything that was going on, and he really should have just done his 2 years. And I think that if he would have done his 2 years or 4 years, whatever it may have been, because it wouldn't have been hard time, it was all financial stuff. So I think if he would have done the time, he would have been
your family. You guys would have got money. There would have been envelopes for your family.
For sure.
Right. He would have been closer. He would have been closer to these guys than what he even was. Because if you remember, Red, during this time in the 70s and stuff like that, they had to go to American Bonding for meetings to account for the $1.5 million that they embezzled from the Teamsters Union. They had in American Bonding, you were told they had an easel board on the wall, and they had to account for all those figures. So I think that if my father would have just played the game, because my father knew that he wasn't actually my father was the one that got pinched as well. My father didn't go running to the FBI. The FBI came to him because of Harold Lurie. Harold Lurie was the one that went to the FBI and the IRS and threw this whole can of worms up in the air and brought my father's name into this. So I think that they would have looked at my father a lot differently, the mob, if my dad would have just done the time and said, hey, listen, I'll do the time, I'll do whatever it takes, but I'm not working with the government.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. You guys are definitely survivors. Definitely. You guys are survivors.
It was no easy task, I'll tell you. It's been a hard life and a hard road.
I want to say thank you from everybody, okay? Everybody watching this has really thoroughly enjoyed this conversation today and enjoyed meeting you guys on the channel. This is one of the longest live feeds that we've done, and I think everybody's asked a lot of questions in here. Mm-hmm. I really appreciate you guys taking your time this Sunday afternoon and spending it with us.
Thanks for having us.
No, it's
we
it's
really
amazing.
Appreciate you letting us on the show.
Oh no, it's been a long time coming. I mean, this has been something that we should have done a while ago. You guys go check out the book. You can get it on Amazon, Deadly Associates, and you can read the book. I haven't yet, but I'm going to. Now that we've sat and talked and learned, I mean,
Yeah.
it's fascinating. I'm really sorry what happened. You guys shouldn't have had to go through that. And I know there's mixed feelings because it's organized crime, and it's like, okay, well, your dad wasn't an angel at the same
Right.
time.
Not at all.
But still, it's your dad. You know what I mean? You only get one.
Right,
But
exactly.
he wasn't a hitter. He wasn't a hitter. He was a businessman.
Right,
Right.
Laundering money.
right, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Red, I got a shirt I'm gonna send you. I made it just for you.
All my friends are federal on the federal watch list.
Isn't that
Thank
true?
you, Joey. Yes.
That's
It's
awesome. This has been an awesome afternoon. I want to say thank you again, guys. Red, do you have any final thoughts here?
Trace had a question. I put it up here. How old was your father when he was killed? I'd say
He was
murdered.
29.
I wouldn't say
29.
Yeah, 29 years old.
He was 29 years old.
Wow.
Awful.
He was 29 years old.
Yeah, very young.
Wow.
Yep.
I remember when it happened, and I didn't know you guys. I didn't know the family. I didn't know anybody, but except the people that were involved on the other end, the outfit end. And I never really realized, it never touched me as much as finding when I did talk to you.
Yeah.
Years ago. I believe I was the first one to buy a book from you too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still got your
Yeah.
book on my shelf.
That's awesome.
Yeah. You know,
Well, hey,
I was
everybody.
the one, and if you remember, I was the one that told you to write the book, Red.
you, John Drummond, and a lot of people, but you said, yeah, you ought to do it. And I said, well, you guys ought to write a book too. Well, I'm working on it. We got to get the family together.
Yeah.
Yeah, it took forever.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, guys. I don't think this should be the last time. We should do this again.
Sure.
This has been a lot of fun. I
Definitely.
want to read the book. Maybe I'll have more questions at that point. I think all the viewers out here had a great time, and for being an unprecedented broadcast that we normally don't do on Sundays, but today's been fun. It's been a really good time, and I want to thank you both. Red, thank you, sir, for coming on and spending your afternoon. Nick, Joey, it's been a great time.
Thank you.
Again, everybody, if you want to go check out the book, it's on Amazon. You can pick it up. It's Deadly Associates. Get a copy, read it, do a little research. You guys have a very interesting story, and I think there's going to be questions in the comments. You guys have questions, put it in the comments in the video even after we're live. And we'll be answering comments in questions. So
You can find us on Facebook too.
And on Facebook. Go look them up on Facebook. You
And
guys have been
Joey,
awesome.
if they want an autograph book, give Adam the link to it or where to contact somebody, and
Yeah,
we'll
I'll
put
do
it
that.
in the description underneath here in the comments.
We'll put it in the
Okay.
description down below.
There
All
are a
right,
lot of
guys.
people like autograph books.
Great.
I sell a lot
Yeah.
of them.
Yeah.
You guys have a great day. Red,
Thank you too.
Joey,
You too.
Nick, thank you so
Thank
much,
you very
guys.
much for having us on the show.
You're welcome. Thank you for
Thank you.
spending your time with us. Have a great day, guys. Mob Vlog.